as we say in Sweden, god fortsättning. Well, happy continuing to Christmas. This is the second day after Christmas in Sweden. We celebrate the 24th of December. So we had such a lazy day yesterday. I think we spent most of it indoors, just eating some candy and watching movies, knitting, and I went to bed very, very early. I was so tired after all the preparations and the celebration at Christmas Eve. So actually, my plan was yesterday. Hi Pia. My plan yesterday evening was to sort my seed packages. Hi Alice from UK. Well, to sort my seed packages and to make a plan for winter sowings in my polytunnel. But you know what happened? I put my youngest, hi Freddie, I put my youngest kid to bed and I actually fell asleep beside him, and it was so nice just to, you know, when it's all warm in the bed and his breathing just beside me. So, well, I fell asleep and I didn't wake up. So today after breakfast, I got my seed packages and I sorted out the things I want to sow in my polytunnel. And for you who are new to this channel, this is this is me first of all, and I am Sarah, and I grow a vegetable garden in Sweden, and it's very cold in Sweden today. Hi Nancy. I don't know exactly. I actually removed all my my thermometers a while ago, a few years ago, because it sort of stressed me to have them. When I was a beginner in the garden and with the greenhouses, I had thermometers all over the place. And I have the electric ones that I could keep here in the polytunnel, and I had like a sensor, a sensor indoor, so I could spot the temperature in the greenhouse. But I found out that I checked that all the time, and it sort of stressed me when I was, it's so cold, I need to go out and do this and that. And I got stressed because I didn't have the time necessarily. Hi everyone, stopping by watching me from Sweden. So I actually removed all the thermometers, and now I have no clue about how cold it is. And the truth is, it doesn't bother me either. It is the temperature, it is, and it's fine with me. But I go live from my mobile phone, and I also have the microphones, and the battery don't really like the very cold temperatures outside, so I stay in my polytunnel. But I will show you the mess in here. I have stopped to apologize for the mess in my garden. I am very happy about that. And you see, I am the mother of 4 kids and I work quite a lot. So I don't have the time all the time to clean up. So this is the embarrassing area in my greenhouse where I keep pots and things that I will need later on. And this is a polytunnel. It's produced in Sweden by Jordnära. The width is 5 meters and it is 9 meters tall. And in this place where we stand right now, I grow flowers and I have berries, the blackberries, and I have peach trees and nectarines and etc. And this is one thing I wanted so much to do before it got this cold, and it was to wash up the plastic, but I didn't have time to do it. And I wanted to do that. I hope I have the time later on in spring. Okay, so this part just ahead of us is, I call this my the leafy factory, or the factory where I produce leaves. And usually in springtime this is all green, and Yeah, it is a wonderful international group. I love it. And it's so nice to see where you all come from. And we gather here and we learn from each other. I love to read your comments on how I do things, because you always share a bit from your gardens too. So I learn a lot. And this is fantastic. But here in Sweden, we do have quite cold winters, and I grow vegetables so that I can harvest things in my gardens. I have 2 gardens because I love gardening. But I can go out in my gardens and harvest eatable things all year round, even though I garden in Sweden. So I prefer then to grow the very hardy varieties of vegetables. And in my other garden, I have the corn salad, for example. But I'll show you what I have here. My cats recently found this place, unfortunately, so they have destroyed a few things. But I have the parsley, and this is to overwinter here, and it will produce new leaves in spring. In here I store my root vegetables, lots of carrots and beetroots. I have the celeriac, lots of things. This is a clamp, so it's just protected very easily with a plastic bag, not very nice looking, but and then I have a few empty beds here, and this is what I'm going to do today. I'm going to make sowings. I have spinach here, and it's going to overwinter here, and in February it's begin to grow again, produce new leaves, and I can harvest it late February or March, depending on what kind of winter we have. A few, not many, carrots are left. The leek looks a bit tired, but I still harvest this, and it is okay, even though it looks a bit tired. All right, so I have had this polytunnel. I put it up in 2015, and even though it's messy, it is an amazing place to produce vegetables in a time of year where you don't usually see like leafy greens thriving in a garden in Sweden. So what I do is that I make what we call winter sowings. So I sow plenty of vegetables like carrots and the leaves in winter in cold soil, outdoors or in a polytunnel. And the seeds will rest in the ground. And when the ground is warmed up in spring, it starts to germinate and grow. So this is actually a fantastic way to grow vegetables in cold climate. And I have seen, I made a video a couple of weeks ago from my main kitchen garden where I made a small winter sowing of leafy greens in a raised bed. And plenty of people commented on that, and I saw a few of you commented from Canada. And Canada is also a great country to make those winter sowings, and you have a few gardeners making excellent videos on winter sowings from Canada. What is a tricky thing gardening in Sweden is that we have a very dark winter. So I was out here in the garden, I think it was like 3:30 in the afternoon. Yeah, that's correct. And I catch like the late sunlight before it disappeared. And someone commented in the north of Sweden, in Dalarna, saying that, oh, you have very light, it's dark in here now. And in the north parts of Sweden, you hardly see the sun. It's never daylight in this time of year. So in Canada, for example, I think someone compared it to be at the same breadgrad, or same level at the earth as like France. So you do have kind of bright, daylight. You have daylight, sunny, and we have darkness. So it's a bit tricky for things to grow in winter, even though if I had like a hotbed in Sweden, it would not be able to grow. And I made some tests a few years ago in another polytunnel where I made hotbeds in October, November, December, January and February. So it was 5 hotbeds that winter, and just to compare how it actually grew. So I made sowings in the beds. You know, a hotbed is a place, is a pile of fresh manure that will sort of heat up, and you can make a sowing in there even though it's winter. So the sowings I made in October, November, December and January, it germinated and it came up like 1 centimeter. Then nothing happened and nothing happened and nothing happened until February, when daylight increased. So in February, things actually starts to grow. So what I do now is I prepare my beds all in the main kitchen garden and also in my polytunnels. So I put the seeds in the ground and then I just wait. And in February, maybe already in January, things starts to germinate and it starts to grow in February. And in March, April, May, I have a big green party. So all the spaces here will be green by then. But it will not be green unless I prepare it, right? So I have to do some work now in winter, and I love to do it. This does not look like fantastic right now, but I prepared this bed yesterday. And until yesterday, this was a huge pile over here, an old compost and a mixture between compost and a hotbed. So I simply removed that and I cleared the space. I have dug down a few buckets with the bokashi compost. And it is now time for me to make sowings. Here I see that my cats have been busy digging around, but I will prepare this space too today and see if I can sow a few things. It is a bit tricky to do this, and quite a common thing to say among people who have never done this before is that it's absolutely crazy to sow things in the polytunnel or in the greenhouse in the middle of winter. Well, how come? Well, we can't fit in the tomatoes later on, they say. That's not a problem, I say. Because you simply remove the things you don't want to have in your bed by then. So I simply fill up all the bed, all the space I have. I keep netting, a net on top to prevent cats from scratching around in here. Just move that. But I also have another project for me going on in winter. And usually, you know, I love kale and I love the cabbage, all the brassica. And I used to do like this. In January, indoors, I make sowings, just a few seeds. Let's see if I can find it. I have a basket here with a few seeds packages. I have a favorite. Oh. So I sow a few seeds of the cabbage with pointed head. My favorite variety is Jersey Wakefield, and it grows really fast. So Jersey Wakefield, and another one of my favorite is Forbåt 3, and this is a Savoy cabbage. So let's say I make a sowing with 6 seeds of each in January indoors in Sweden. Extra light and everything is just nice and cozy for the plants. And I keep them indoors for 8 weeks. I have nice and big plants then. And then I simply plant them out in my cool greenhouse in March. It may be frozen, but it's okay. They can stand that. So I plant them out and I nurse them and care for them. And in May I can harvest in Sweden the fully developed cabbage hearts, and it's amazing to do that. So what I have to keep in mind today when I make this sowings, the winter sowings in my polytunnel, is that I need to sort of keep some space for the cabbage, the early cabbage. And I simply used to, put something on the ground that will mark. So here I did not sow any spinach or whatever, and this is where I am going to plant my cabbage. And usually I leave the space in one bed so I can sort of keep the rotation, my, the växtföljd, how I rotate the crops to prevent diseases, etc. But my plan now is just to get started, and you will just come along with me, and I can tell you a few things on the way. But you are a bit too far away, so I can't see your comments, right? I just got this from the kids' playground, because when I make the sowings here, I want to keep them in rows. Let's see if it works. Oh, I just wanted to show you. Unfortunately, I have plenty of weeds coming in from the outside. So I cleared this space up yesterday. This is a few things. I don't know what you call this in English. I should have known. In Swedish, it's kvickrot. Very long, disgusting roots. So I weeded this place yesterday, and I will grow the fast-growing leaves here, radishes, etc. And then I will have to weed this place all over again before I plant tomatoes or whatever next spring. And when you are, let's see, when you are new to gardening, you may be very interested in, no, this may not work. No, this was not a good idea, I'm sorry. It's too much, undecomposed things in the ground to make this work. I'll just do it like this. I wanted to tell you, I do not necessarily note the things I sow here. Usually I see what it is when it's time to harvest. But I do have, these things are meant to sow and then germinate and grow to quite big plants, and I will dig them up and then transplant them into my main kitchen garden. So they are not to harvest from this place. But I will not put that in here because I have a lot of weeds. And this one you recognize from the sowing I did in my raised bed a while ago. It is it's a kale, red Russian. So I will just sprinkle them in this row. And in here I grow the tiny leaves, right? So I don't have to think about spacing or something like that. So when I make a sowing like this, I prefer to start, by the end of the bed, because then I want to keep the space into like 10 centimeters from the rows, from one row to another. And it's easier to do that if I start with one row here, and then when I make the other row, I simply put the soil back on that row. And I wanted to use this wooden thing to make the rows like straight, but there are too many thick things in the ground, and the ground is still a bit frozen, so it was not possible to do that. But here's another row, and you see I don't water it. I will move you a bit. My plan was to water a few days ago. Dill. So my plan was to water a few days ago, but then it froze like yesterday. And I don't want to water when it's this cold, because what happens then is that a lot of water will stay in small like pockets with air in the soil, and it may damage the seeds. And I will just repeat this, making a new row at the same time as I cover the other row with soil. And one thing I recognize from when I was new gardening as well is that I was very interested in having like a finished compost, but my soil looks like this. It's not yet fully decomposed, but it's not a problem to sow in that kind of material. Most things I sow right now are very, you would say, like robust seeds. They can stand nearly anything. Here is a variety of spinach. You see, I just pack them all up here, the rows close to each other, just fill up this area to make it look green and nice in springtime. And this spinach is Rubino. And it is actually a spinach with like purple nerves. Do you say nerves? No, I didn't make the sowing. I grew this one in pots last year, and it was amazing. I have been growing a few like purple spinach varieties before, but I was not very pleased with them. But this one, Rubino, is beautiful. I will make one, no, not one. I will leave some space here for the cabbage. I grew the early cabbage in another row last year. I will just put that one on ground on top. So this will be a place where I plant my cabbage next year. And then I move on to another row. And the trick with the early cabbage, I grew also the broccoli from early plants. Might grow some other thing too, but That's my standard, the broccoli and the cabbage with pointed head and Savoy cabbage. And if I make the sowing indoor in January, the plants will develop quite quickly, quite fast. And I plant them out in March, and already in May they will be finished. And they grow really fast by then in my polytunnel. So even though it's in Sweden and we may have frost nights, they will still develop very good. Now I chose the pak choi, joy choi. Someone asked me about how I chose the variety or from what seeds companies. And I buy most of my seeds from Swedish seeds companies, basically to get varieties that someone may have tried before. I have a few examples on things I have grown and not succeeded with, simply because they can't stand the cold, or if it's like vegetables for summer, they may be produced to grow in a warmer climate. Here's a root. Check this one out. Oh my God. It just continues. Not very nice. Another favorite among the winter varieties. And this is a lettuce. This is Little Gem, and it's been very popular in Sweden the last couple of years. It is a mini variety, this Roman lettuce, and the head only gets about 15 centimeters or so. Yeah, it's good to see you have your own conversation in the comments section while I sow. And I do the same. I simply sprinkle the seeds in my hand and I just throw them out. It's easier for me, I could say something about that. It's easier for me to make the sowings in rows in here. And that is because I have a lot of weeds. And I also have slugs in my garden. And they come from spaces just outside the greenhouse. And when it comes to the weeds, it's easier for me to weed the ground if I have the vegetables growing in rows, because then I can see where the vegetables are. So I know I can spot the lettuce in a row and simply remove the things that's in between. This one is a really nice one. I don't know the English name for it, but it's a brassica too. And its name is kailan. A Chinese broccoli, I think you call it too. But in Sweden you would say kailan. You may wonder about the seeds and this kind of seed package. It's actually so that I have my own seed collection in Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Finland. And this is a collection with seeds that I have chosen just because they are hardy and they sort of suit to be put in the ground when it's cold. And some of them are very hardy so that they can actually stand in the ground very long in a Swedish fall. This is exactly what you want to spend a day like this doing. Such a nice thing. And some people ask me about the depth. I mean, how deep should you make the sowing or put the seeds in the ground? I never care about that. I simply make a row with my hand and I put the seeds in there and they will germinate. I mean, it's not very often you make a row for seeds that is way too deep. But right now, as I'm speaking, I catch this. It's a Portulac. It's one of my favorites too, and the kids' favorite. The Portulac is one of the vegetables with, I mean, very, very, very tiny seeds. You hardly spot them. I will show you later on. And now I see that I made this row way too deep because the Portulac actually grows on top of the soil. So I will put some soil back. But like brassicas and lettuce, they grow even though they are a bit into the ground or on top of it, nearly. But here I will show you. So you see they are very, very tiny. And this is Portulac. There are a few varieties of Portulac. And this is the one we call yellow. That's my favorite. I will leave it on top of the ground. And make another row. I was thinking about 4 spaces for the early brassicas. 1, 2, 3, 4. Maybe here then. I'll just put something on top of the ground. I don't know if this is actually funny to watch, but my experience is that I sometimes, when I was a beginner or when I was trying to learn more, I am still learning. I mean, on how people garden in other parts of the world, for example. It's very good to see how people actually do, not only to read. So I hope this can be useful. Many times when it comes to gardening, you know, everything, it sounds a bit complicated when you read about it. And since I also write about gardening in books and in blog posts and articles online, I can relate to that, because sometimes if I should tell people on how to make a winter sowings, for example, I may have this or that space in an article online to fill up. So I make like a list with things, think of this or that, or prepare like this or that or whatever. But what I really want to say is go get your seed packages, put the seeds in ground, put soil on top, and then you're finished. And well, you see, it's basically what I'm doing. I want to tell you another thing. This is a lettuce, tennis ball lettuce. And this one produces, I mean, really super tasty lettuce heads, the size of a very small ball. And to form that head or ball shape, you have to space them. Let's say you have 5 or 10 centimeters apart with the plants. But I have had those seeds for several years. And they sort of lose their potential, and in a while it will not germinate that good. So I use the seed packages that have been lying in my basket for a while, and I make like broadcast sowings from them. So it's very good. I sort things out for the seed packages, and I make sowings, broadcast sowings from the ones I sort of guess will not grow that good. This one is, what am I going to choose? This is a nice variety of mini pak choi. Oriental Greens Extra Dwarf Pak Choi. Very tender and delicious. I did a video on this a few years ago, I think, in Swedish. It's upside down, but it is a pak choi variety. It's only a thumb high. It's super tasty and beautiful. It will be a problem for me, though, here next year because of all the slugs. I will have to try to find out a way to kill them or catch them already over there before they entered here. But I mean, if I lose half of this bed, I will still have enough vegetables to feed my family. So I hope that will do. And you notice I only make sowings now of the leafy greens in here. No carrots yet, and no radishes yet. And the radishes I sow are varieties that are fast growing, because I notice sometimes when we talk about the radishes that in other countries you talk about radishes among the Asian kale varieties. Not Asian kale maybe, but in Swedish we would say rättika. A very long root, white or almost purple. But the radishes I talk about are tiny varieties, fast growing. And I have a variety that mature only in 18 days. It's super, super, super. But this is the arugula rocket. The kind of radishes that I grow, the fast growing, they tend to germinate quite fast. And when they have germinated, the seeds, the leaves are very vulnerable. Can't even pronounce that. They are so tender, so they will be destroyed if it comes like a frost night. So I will simply leave space to fast-growing radishes and also the carrots in the bed over there. I can't really see what you're commenting on right now because you have ended up so far away. And carrots, I want to have them in a separate place because they will stay in ground much longer than the spinach or lettuce or whatever. Now I am going to sow this little darling. And this is a fast-growing mix of pak choi. It's CC. Is it Super Crunch or Crunch something? The variety is called, and it's a mix between a few varieties, different varieties of pak choi, and I broadcast sowing the seeds in a quite thick row, or whatever you might want to call it. And that is because I am going to harvest those leaves when they are tiny. They are not allowed to grow like big. So I want to harvest them tiny, and then I can sew them tight together. It's time for me to mark another brassica row with this little branch. Just cover the seeds, and I have the brassicas here. This is actually going to be perfect, I think. I will not water this area now. I will wait, so the seeds will lay in ground and just wait for happy days. And when snow comes, so that I can collect some snow, I will put snow on top of the ground to sort of make it look like outdoor in the main kitchen garden. And then the snow will melt and it will put some moisture into the ground, and it will wake up the seeds, and they will germinate and start to grow quite slow in this cold space. Another row here. If you want to know about the varieties I sowed out in my main kitchen garden, I have a new blog post for you at sarahbackman.com, where you can read about the varieties. Now I sow my favorite spinach variety. And this is Medania. It's a super spinach. I mean, I really mean super spinach. It's one of my favorites. I love it. So you see, some of the vegetables I chose for this bed, I grow a few varieties, or I repeat the sowing in this bed. And this is also because, I mean, it's not 100%, you know, it's not like I am going to succeed with 100% with all the sowings. I may lose like 25% of it or something like that. So it's better for me to spread out the risks, considering that we are in Sweden. This is what you call this? This is a kohlrabi. I know this one. And at the same time, I simply forgot it. You have to help me out with this. What is this? Kohlrabi in Swedish. But what's the name in English? The you say kohlrabi. Yeah, kohlrabi. Similar. I love the pink varieties. Yeah, it's kohlrabi, Donna. I know you are absolutely right. And kohlrabi, I'm not going to like broadcast sow that kind of seed. I will try to space them with, let's say, 3 or 4 centimeters apart, and I will have to remove some plants when I see how they germinated. And I think I am the same like most of you. I collect too many seeds. I love to buy seeds. I love to try the new varieties. I love to take nice pictures of nice vegetables. So I buy seeds pretty much all the time. Makes me happy. But in another way, I tend to have a bit too many seeds. Smells a bit like cat poo in here. Someone did their toilet thing here. So, but when you have a lot of seeds and you read at the seeds packages says, use this one before September 2017, please. I mean, you never do that with all the seeds you have. But then you can actually use this method with the broadcast sowings. And if 25% of the seeds you use do not germinate, then why not be happy? Even though this is another favorite of the packed choice, and this one is Purple Lady from Baker Creek Heirloom Seeds. It's a beautiful variety. I have to show it to you. Look at that, with the green stems and the purple leaves. Isn't it beautiful? Yeah, it is, Donna, thank you. You give it a try. The Baker Creek Heirloom Seeds have absolutely amazing varieties. And I love that they are very interesting in presenting like the heirloom varieties. We have that in Sweden too, but it's very tricky. I did an article about that when it comes to importing seeds from other countries outside the EU. For example, it's very tricky. So we sometimes can't reach those varieties because they have to be tested to be able to export to other countries, and that is very, very expensive. So I made an interview via email with the Baker Creek Heirloom Seeds, and they explained their process about this. I have to choose now. I don't want things in this bed that develop very slowly. I have parsley here, for example, but I will sow that in maybe a smaller pot or in another place where I don't have to wait for it so very long. I also have a leek. No, it's not leek. It's a fast-growing onion, white Lisbon. It says Allium kepa. This is not a kepa onion. It's this one for salads. You harvest it and eat it fresh. And I will sow that in another pot too. I will just choose this one. It's a favorite. It is lettuce too. And this is Lolo Bionda. And my kids, they love the lettuce variety called Isberg. It's very crispy. It's close to a spring onion. Thank you, Benny. This one, Lolo Bionda, is very close to the iceberg lettuce variety. Very crispy leaves, and most important of all is that it is green. And one of my boys, he will never eat any red leaves. I love the red leaves simply because almost all leaves in spring are green. So I try to mix it up with some red leaves. He won't eat it. But he loves the iceberg lettuce. But iceberg lettuce is quite difficult to grow. Sometimes difficult to grow. But this one is easier. And this is rubra, the auroch. Is a red auroch. It's absolutely amazing because it has the almost purple leaves. And this picture is not very good. I think It depends on where you grow them and how much water they get. But usually it has more purple. It have more purple color on the leaves. This one I can actually grow in here and then transplant. I have to show you. This one is so nice because the seeds look a bit different. They are not the same. You see, some of them are black and very small, and then you have another shape, almost look like pepper. I asked the seeds company about this, and they said I think it depends on how the seeds mature, but they will grow, all of them. This one I can actually dig up and transplant in spring, because they will last a while. This is just perfect. And then there's another row with cabbage in here. Right. Look here. And I have no clue where I have the vegetables. I only know that where there are like signs on top of the soil, I am going to put my brassicas in ground. I have 4 places. What will I choose? The cabbage with a pointed head, maybe one with a variety of red pointed head cabbage, the broccoli, and yeah, I had the Savoy cabbage too. Yes. I have another plan before I go inside. We are going to go have a barbecue with our neighbors this afternoon. Usually 2 days after Christmas we gather together for a big party with our neighbors. But now with Corona times, it's not possible. So we are going to go barbecuing outside at our neighbor's place. So my husband went to the local shop that's open today and bought a sausage, a lamb sausage for barbecuing from lamb brought up just a short while from here at my friend Åsa's place. So we're going to barbecue lamb sausage. Well. It's a bit cold though for barbecuing outside in Sweden today, but oh my God. I wanted you to see what I'm doing. This is I don't know what you call it, a foam box with drainage holes in the bottom. And what I did yesterday was simply to fill it in the bottom with old garden scrap, things that I cleared from another space. And on top of it, I put bokashi compost. I do bokashi compost with all the kitchen waste that we have from our home, and it's very, very, very useful. I simply love the idea that I can use the kitchen waste directly into the ground without digging or having to make a big pile and turn the pile and transport it all over the garden twice to use it. So I simply have my bucket, I fill it with bokashi compost and mix it with this bokashi bran, and I ferment it indoors in 14 days, and then it's ready to use. And I use it also in winter. So what I have in my greenhouse is a few of these and they are emptied in fall. And I put like leaves or grass clippings or whatever in the bottom, and then I fill the bokashi compost up here, and I put old like dirt or whatever as a layer in between the buckets I empty in this. And I made that yesterday too. So now I have fresh compost on top, and I am going to sow a few carrots in here. So I think for me, the bokashi compost is like a savior. I can actually, well, start up the compost process, and I can grow things on top of the compost while it decomposes. I don't have to wait for it to turn to soil and then use it, because I use the compost meanwhile, and that's really, really good. So I do have here this foam box. Someone kept fishes in here before, so I simply have bokashi compost in here and this fresh soil on top. And this is from the compost that I emptied yesterday in this corner of this bed, and you see it's very, it looks like this. And a small box like this is a very, very good place to make a winter sowing. And I thought about that when I made my last video from the main kitchen garden about winter sowings, that you can read now at my blog at sarahbackman.com. Many asked about winter sowings if you have not prepared for a winter sowing, because if you live in a very cold climate and it's like 30 centimeters of snow right now, and you want to go out and give this a go that you have seen on a video on YouTube, and I want to try it really, but I didn't prepare any raised bed to do this. Well, how can I do? Well, you simply prepare a box like this. It could be plain compost. You can actually buy it in the supermarket. Or you do like I did here, to prepare with like bokashi compost and fresh compost or soil on top. And you can sow a whole box with spinach or whatever, just broadcast, sow the seeds on top, and you cover it with a thin layer of compost, and you put it in your greenhouse or you put it in your kitchen garden, wherever. And it's okay if it snows on top of this or rain or whatever, because later on when the ground is warmed up by the spring sun, it will start to grow. And if you put a box like this in your greenhouse, it will grow even faster. In Sweden, where I live, in my greenhouse, this greenhouse, it will be about 20 degrees Celsius in February, a sunny day in February. My garden beds, they will sort of store the heat. It may be cold also in the nighttime, but some of the heat will be stored into the ground. And it's actually easier for me to grow and make the winter sowings in a garden bed like this instead of using small pots. Because with small pots, you know, the cold can reach into the soil and make it freeze. But with this huge area of compost, it will freeze not that fast. It's a bit tricky to explain this to you in English, but I hope you understand what I mean. So it's better, and this is why I actually have the the garden beds in my greenhouse and not using the whole space to grow in pots, for example. If you have like a fancy greenhouse, you may cover your greenhouse with rocks, for example, and you grow in pots, but that's not as good as growing directly into the ground. And in my case, for example, when I want to grow the vegetables also in wintertime, it's far more good to do it like this, not using the pots. And but this is second best to use a box like this. And in this box, since I now have a lot of leafy greens, and I also have a few other boxes where I am going to sow more of the vegetables, I am going to make a winter sowings of flowers. And I'm going to I didn't decide what to sow. But I have an idea. I want to have more cornflowers, and I made a sowing with some of the summer flowers, the nigella and the poppy and cornflower already in fall, but cats and slugs destroyed the cornflower and the nigella. So I might go for that in this box. Let's see what I can find. I have so many nice seeds. What? Yeah. So you see the rest of, here's the, like the red cabbage calibos with pointed head. I have the broccoli, it's a mix between the black kale and broccoli. And then the early Jersey Wakefield and more broccoli and more cabbage of different varieties. But I'm going to sow that in another place where I don't think it will be that much damages from the slugs. So what I do, I have 4 varieties here. So I simply, I'm so curious now about your comments because you are very active. What I try to do, this the seeds I'm going to sow now in this box are not to, I will not, they are not going to flower in here, right? So I will just pre-cultivate them, and I will then lift them up and transplant them in into other spaces. So what I do is that I make this one into 4. And usually when I make a sowing like this, I put my seeds on top of this and I take a photo with my phone. But now you are in the phone, so I'm not able to do that. So this is the nigella midnight, a blue variety. And it's going to flower quite early in the season, I think. It's really good that you communicate while I do this. And Donna, that color is smashing. And what I learned from last year, I was an idiot because I did not choose blue flowers. So now I simply, you see, I sprinkle the seeds, the surface. It doesn't matter if they end up quite close to each other because I will separate them when I transplant them. And I now have 2 gardens, so I am actually allowed to sow plenty. And then I just do like this, cover them with some soil. Oh, so nice. what I discovered last year was that this year, I grew too many pink flowers. I had almost all of my flowers were pink. And that was great, of course, but I missed the blue colors. So for this year, I'm going to grow more blue flowers. I have been practicing this year at the local flower farm at Anna-Stina's place, and she grows lots and lots of cut flowers. And she has been taking over this farm from her dad. And he was taught, she told me, that the cornflower, if you want to make a fall sowing of cornflower, that should be made like September 13. I think it was 13 or 15. Doesn't matter really. But I will remember that always, because I have a boy born the 13th of September. This is the Nigella lovey-dovey. It's a white one, and this is, well, it might be the most beautiful one, I think. It is really beautiful. And this is so good that you can make a winter sowing with flowers like this. I have, of course, seen many videos from people making winter sowings in Canada, because you practiced that, I think, long before we did in Sweden. And it's very common in Canada to use old bottles. You cut them in halves and you make the sowings, and you put the other half on top of it and you leave them outside. In Sweden, it's not that good to do a sowing that way. Classic, fantastic, it's better to do a winter sowing in a larger box or so, or a larger pot, because it will not freeze and thaw the same as a small pot will do in Sweden, where we do have a climate that's changing over winter. You know, it's cold right now, but in a while it might be 7 degrees, and then it will be down to 20 degrees Celsius, like minus. So this is classic, fantastic, and this variety I thought was just beautiful, because it's more like lavender tones. And the cornflower is really good to sow in fall, and it will overwinter. You may not think about that. And cornflower is a classical summer flower in Sweden, because we love to use it. You know, we have this, we celebrate midsummer in Sweden in late June. Everyone is like crazy. And traditionally we love to have cornflowers in bouquets, and we make wreaths to wear around our heads. And cornflower is very common to use. So this is this one. And now I start to get a bit of cold in my fingers. I think if I make half of the sowings today, and I'll go out and just make the other half of it tomorrow, then basically all space in my polytunnel is occupied before it's even spring. And that will leave me with plenty of other things to do when it's warm and nice, and I can have a few hours in March or whatever to transplant my tomatoes and peppers without being too stressed about not having the time. I think the winter sowings for me as a parent, still having quite young kids, is really, really good. It's not very common that I have like an hour or so, as I do right now when my husband is home. But you know, to go out and make a sowing in a box like this will take me like 10 minutes. In 10 minutes, and I will have lots and lots of flowers, and I will just move on to make a little piece each day. All right, this one now. And now we will move on to the carrots. The box idea is amazing, yes. And you can actually, I have spinach in another box over there, and I have the leek. You spot the leek over there. And when I have harvested the leek and eat it in, let's say, in January, because they will not last very long, I can tell, the mid thing of the leek is still fantastic. They only look a bit tired and messy on the outside, but they are fresh and really nice. But I will try to eat them, let's say, in January. And then I just empty that box with the bokashi compost, and it's finished by then. And I empty it in another barrel, and then I fill up with fresh bokashi compost and just another piece of compost on top, and I make new sowings. Bokashi compost and heat. Well, in Sweden, in a polytunnel like this, it's no use in trying to fix some extra heat from bokashi compost or the hotbed, for example. I see videos where people dig down a lot of fresh manure, for example, in beds in a polytunnel to try to heat it up. But it's not possible to do a thing like this in my climate. You have to. It's too much work, and it does not give any effect on the climate in this polytunnel. It doesn't matter really. But the bokashi compost, usually it will go up to 40 degrees Celsius. So I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, but even though it's winter and I mix the fresh bokashi compost with leaves or garden waste or whatever in a box or in a barrel like this, I can measure the temperature, and it will usually be up to 40 degrees. But then the temperature, the heat will disappear quite quickly. This is a mix of carrots that I love, and this is this is a mix that we call harlequin, and it consists of several varieties of fast-growing carrots. And in Sweden and other cold climates, we have great use in knowing about the different varieties of carrots. To some people, carrot is carrot, right? But we do have several varieties of carrots, and these are the fast-growing carrots. We also have the slow-growing carrots, the winter carrots, but these in Sweden we call them summer carrots. And they develop, basically, you sow the seeds. If you sow the seeds in spring, when it's the soil and the ground is warmed up, they will develop and be ready to harvest in 3 months from sowings. Of course, that's not the case when you sow in wintertime, but when it comes to the late varieties, the winter carrots and the fall carrots, like Rothild, we have a variety called in Sweden, and they will develop in a longer time. So let's say they need 4 or 5 months in the ground before they are like huge carrots. Fast growing carrots. You don't have that? But this is harlequin, and another variety, fast growing varieties, are the Nantes varieties. I have a variety that grows very good in my climate, and it is Nantes 2. And if you grow Nantes 2, let's say you make the sowings in April, you can harvest April, May, June, early July, for example. And if I make the sowings of the early varieties in July, I can then harvest July, April, August and September, starting to harvest in October. So you should really be careful when you choose the varieties of the carrots. And it's a mistake that many beginners do in the garden, I think. You go to the supermarket. You should never buy the seeds in a supermarket when you are in a hurry, etc. And they did not maybe put an effort to get the varieties that you should really grow in your climate. Sometimes it's the case actually, but when you choose the variety, especially if you are a beginner, you should go for the early varieties, I think, because then you will get what you hope for in quite a short time. The carrots take about 30 days to germinate, so it's not a very good thing to grow the varieties together with kids, for example, if you want to grow something very fast. Enough talking. I will simply sprinkle the seeds on top of the surface here. I don't space them, I simply do it like this. And in this, I hope the slugs will not reach to this. And I can tell you my trick already now, not waiting till summer. In a bucket like this, I may grow melons or cucumbers or something that will climb up here in my polytunnels. And when it's time to plant things, because the carrots, they will grow quite slow, right? So they may be ready to harvest in June, and I am ready to plant my melons or whatever in May. So I may need to keep the plant I am going to put in this one some extra while in a pot. But then when it's time to harvest, I could harvest the tiny carrots, and I start here in the middle. So I have cleared up a space here in the middle, and then I can put my new little plant of melon or cucumber or whatever in the middle, and I have still the carrots around. So that's what I'm doing. And it's the same with the other space too, that when I'm ready to plant something, I just, harvest the entire plant or lift it up and transplant it in another space. So it's not complicated at all. I am nearly finished with this. Not yet fully finished though. What I want to do when I have put seeds in the ground is to just make the surface flat. And I use this tool. Don't know what you call it in English, but usually we use it like this, and we sort of drag the soil with us. But now I use it like this, and I press the ground so it will be flat. Looks so nice. sorry about the picture. Well. And not forgetting, we have one cat. Her name is the Bomb, and she stays here quite a lot. So now I made it impossible for her to destroy my garden bed. And as I said, not watering this area right now. Probably wait for the snow, and then I'll carry in some snow and put on top of the ground. But then, of course, when things start to germinate and grow, I must consider the watering and try to find out how to water in a good way, because I don't want to make this space all wet, so that the seeds that have germinated will be destroyed when I water, and if the water should freeze. And it's a bit tricky. I always keep an eye on the weather report in my app, and I try to see how the temperatures are changing. Right now, for example, we are in a colder period where it's going to stay like this for at least 10 days. And then I'll just don't do anything. But later on, let's say in February, when the temperatures will increase, it may be like 5 degrees outside. It then may be 7 degrees in my polytunnel, and then it may be time to start watering. Usually it is when it's cold like this, it's not warmer inside the polytunnel. The only good thing is that there's no wind and there's no snow or rain that makes it even colder, but the temperatures are quite the same. And but when it gets warmer outside, it will be a lot more warmer in here. So then it could be a sunny day when it's, let's say, 5 degrees outside Celsius. It may be 15 degrees inside the polytunnel, and then things start to happen. And it's very interesting and great fun. Well, I think I just earned a nice cup of tea and some leftovers, the Christmas candy, and I will finish up that bed later on this afternoon or maybe tomorrow. So it's nice to do this thing with you. I hope you got inspired in some way, or at least you had a nice chat with other garden friends. And it was nice to see that so many of you joined me today for this winter sowing in my polytunnel. And as I mentioned, there is another live stream from a few weeks ago where I did a small winter sowing in a raised bed out in the main kitchen garden. So if you haven't seen that, you could have a look. Now it's just for me to wish you all a happy day. I think you call it Boxing Day. It's annandag jul in Sweden. So thank you all for joining me today, and I'll see you soon again. Bye bye.